at the project review subcommittee meeting. If you're lost, sorry, this is what you're in right now. My name is Sandy Hertz. I am the chair of the subcommittee, and I think it'd be great, since we have a couple of new faces and we have one alternate today, if we could just go around the table and introduce ourselves. That'd be wonderful. So if I could start.
I'm Commissioner Anita Grant.
Thank you.
I'm John Papani. I'm a program officer at the Division of Neighborhood Revitalization at Maryland Department of Housing and Development. And I'm covering for Carol Bonnie on the program project.
Thank you.
Tammy Robertson with the Maryland Department of the Environment, Tidal Wetlands Division.
Catherine McCall, Department of Natural Resources, Chesapeake and Coastal Service.
Great. I should have mentioned I'm with Maryland Department of Transportation.
Nick Kelly, Critical Area Commission staff.
Pat Mahoney, in my other life, I'm the Chesapeake Beach Mayor.
Ewing McDowell, Department of Commerce.
Okay. So we have established that we have a quorum. Oh, one more intro. I knew there was somebody sitting there. If you would tell folks what your name is and just where you're from.
Steve Parker, Cecil County.
Thank you. All right. So we are going to get started. It's a very short agenda today. Well, for this meeting, it is this. And Lisa Herger is the first one up. She will be providing a review of updates to renewable energy, commission review, and private notification regulations.
You have to use these even though you're not going to hear my voice through it, but Bob is recording us. I forget how to use them.
It's in the top in between the two. You just have to flip that, and once it turns green, it's on.
Okay. Thank you. As Sandy said, my name is Lisa Herger. I'm the Mapping and Regulations Coordinator for the Commission, for those of you who don't know me. It's nice to see you all back again in person, and nice to welcome Anita and John to the subcommittee. As you see on your agenda, I'm going to be presenting to you two separate regulations proposals. The first one is one that you've already seen and voted on. They are updates to our renewable energy regulations, which, as outlined in the staff report, that original proposal was already published as final in the Maryland Register and became effective back in March. But subsequent to that approval, we were contacted by our colleagues at the Department of Natural Resources, Power Plant and Environmental Review Division, and the Public Service Commission staff, and we all were coordinating on when an applicant comes in for a renewable energy project, and this could be more than solar. I know that we focus on solar in our regulations, but it could also be when someone is applying for another type of CPCN or Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity project. It could be gas related, it could be other energy type related projects. They wanted to make sure that we were all coordinating with the application requirements. So primarily, these regulations have to do with application requirements. Practice. So the purpose was to, as I stated, require a list of information for these Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity applications, or CPCN applications. We wanted to make sure specifically with regard to solar energy generating systems in both limited development areas and resource conservation areas, that they be sent to the commission staff for review. And at that point, we would discern whether or not they needed to be elevated to this commission for review and approval, or if they can be reviewed at the staff level. And finally, require that any final approved application for a major solar energy generating project in the critical area, that we get a copy of that final approval sent back to at least commission staff. So the renewable energy regulations, as I said, Chapter 14 is brand new, became effective in March. And what we've added to it is Regulation 02-1. And this is a list of all the requirements that we want to see specific to critical area. And this is going to go on for a few slides. And I just highlighted some of the important parts. So for major solar energy generating systems and resource conservation areas, we want to have a site plan that addresses all these things. The list starts here in 2702, which is our state and local government projects, and regulation 07. This is where we are asking for specific information. So in regulation 02, you can see this has to do with certificates of public convenience and necessity. And we are asking for pretty basic stuff: critical area boundary, project area and limits of disturbance, the acreage in the critical area, the 100-foot buffer, when applicable, the 300-foot setback, HPAs, habitat protection areas, forest and developed woodland acreages, existing and proposed lot coverage, steep slopes, proposed mitigation areas, calculation for stormwater, notice requirements. So you can see it's a pretty extensive list, but we try to get up as much information as we can up front. And again, you all saw this before, and this has one more thing actually before I get to that. Finally, in subtitle 03, subtitle 03, chapter 1, regulation 04, this is an existing regulation, A through F, where you see text unchanged, is a list of categories of different types of project applications that either have to be sent in or not to commission staff. So we're adding G. So for major and minor solar energy generating systems, you want to get a copy of any application sent to a local jurisdiction, and then a copy of the final approved application. You'll notice that I sent out an amended staff report, and the reason for that is when I saw this published in the regulations in the Maryland Register, there was some extraneous language that nobody caught, including myself, and that is the language that is highlighted. We are proposing that that language be deleted so that the sentence will read, the local approving authority shall submit a copy of any applications for a major or minor solar energy generating system, etc. We have had Emily Vanieri, our Assistant Attorney General, review this to make sure it is considered what we would call a non-substantive change, so we can proceed with the final publication, and she has agreed that it is. The timing is that the commission voted at your May meeting, and we got published in the Register on June 18th. 30-day comment period has expired. We received no public comments. And then today, the commission will vote to publish these regulations as final in the Maryland Register. And then I've estimated that that would happen by August 27th with an effective date of September 6th. So the recommendation today is that this action requested is approval for staff to submit the regulations for publication in the Maryland Register as final, with one non-substantive change, which is the one that I noted and the one that's noted in your amended staff report. So I'll turn it back over to Sandy.
At this point, are there any questions from the commissioners regarding this project or this voting, what do you call this, action item?
Action,
Any question?
So
Tammy, did you have one?
So I'm just a regular old person. And the way this wording is doesn't make any sense to me.
Which wording?
Well, it says that the local authority, which I'm assuming would be a county, is that correct? Would submit a copy of any applications to a local jurisdiction.
Well, that's what
That's
they're
what's being
deleting.
deleted.
That's what's getting, they're.
Oh,
We're
I'm
deleting
sorry.
those
Yes,
words.
Okay.
yeah,
Yep.
you're absolutely right.
That's, yeah.
Oh, I'm
We
sorry.
couldn't understand it
Yeah, like
either.
I'm not too smart.
He
Okay.
wrote it.
You're confirming,
Yes.
you're confirming what we're doing.
Yes.
We reviewed it.
He
and
is a
reviewed
plant
it.
in the audience.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's what we're proposing to take out as a non-substantive change.
Okay.
So that
Yeah.
language will disappear.
Good catch.
Well,
For real, I mean, we didn't catch it the first time,
Yeah.
so. All right, so if there are no other questions, can I get a motion from one of the commissioners to move for a vote on this?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, all right, go ahead with your next presentation.
I think we need to vote.
Oh, we
Yeah,
did
vote.
have the vote.
Yeah.
Oh. Tell you what, guys. All right, all those in favor of the staff proposal regarding these regulations indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Any abstentions? All right, the vote carries. Thank you. All right, so the next agenda item we have is again Lisa, and she will be presenting on updates to water facility regulations, proposed updates to those.
Thank you. Again, this is Lisa Herger, the Regulations and Mapping Coordinator for the Commission. And this afternoon, I'm going to be presenting to you the water dependent regulations, a vote to publish as proposed regulations. And probably, it was a year ago, we introduced this draft proposal to the Commission for information at that meeting. And the main difference of what you're going to see today from what we presented to you back at the August 5th, 2020 meeting is that there was a new regulation attached here. It was called Regulation 11, which Commission staff had decided we're not going to move forward with at this point. So what we have left in this proposal is simply what we consider updates to the regulations. So we're updating it, bringing it up to current drafting standards. There's no real new proposed regulations within here. And we're also trying to update them with regard to if any regulations or laws have changed since this chapter in our regulations was currently adopted by the legislature, in fact, back in 1984. So it's been a long time. And kind of like some of the other chapters you've seen me present to you, it's the same deal. We're just doing some updates. So I'm going to run through those with you. Modernize drafting style update and delete outdated provisions. And in 2701, general provisions, this is our definition section. So we're fiddling around with a few things. We're amending the definition of community pier, disturbance port. We're repealing water use industry because we don't use that term anywhere in our regulations, so we're taking it out. And then we're moving from the buffer regulations, those three terms, permanent disturbance, structure, and temporary disturbance. So not changing them, just shifting them from one regulation to another because we're going to be using these three terms throughout our regulations and they need to be in the general definition section. So diving into Chapter 3, which is the water dependent facilities regulations, we're going to be doing various things with the existing regulations within that chapter. So in Regulation 01, the definition, we're amending the definition of water dependent facility, bring it up to date and more consistent with how the Maryland Department of the Environment defines it, and we're all on the same page with that. Consequently, we worked closely with colleagues from Maryland Department of the Environment on these regulations over the past year or so to make sure that we were getting these things correct, since that their regulations and statute is not our specialty, if you will. In the policy section, we're leaving that in, just redrafting it. Same thing with the general criteria regulation, and same thing with Regulation 04. Same thing with Regulations 05, 06, and 07. You can see these different regulations have to do with specific types of water-dependent uses. So 05 is industrial and port-related, 6 is marinas, and 7 is community piers and other non-commercial boat type of storage facilities. Again, the redrafting is just kind of bringing it up to speed and updating it. Same thing with Regulations 08, 09, and 10, public beaches, research areas, fisheries, activities. And again, this is all in the draft attached to your staff report. And I'll be happy to get into any details with that if you like. Now we're into a new regulation, a new chapter, specifically Chapter 9, which is our habitat protection areas in the critical area. We're going into that buffer regulation, and remember what I said earlier, we're deleting and moving the definitions of structure, permanent, and temporary disturbance, and we're doing some minor drafting. But when we get into Regulation 01-2, there's an actual table for mitigation purposes in there, and because we're doing some manipulation in the water-dependent facilities regs, we're going into that table and we're removing a column that talks about temporary disturbance. And it all fits together with the other regulations that we're doing. So in chapters 11, directives to update critical area maps, and chapter 13. So regulation 04 in the mapping section, we're just doing some updating of some language that talks about water dependent facilities to make it consistent. And for non-water dependent projects in regulation 01, that is another situation where we're amending the definition of non-water dependent project to clarify that water dependent facilities or activities are not considered a non-water dependent project. Crazy but true. In subtitle 02, again, subtitle 02 is state and local agency actions. 01, general provisions, is the definition section. So we're doing a repeal of and replacing the word port to make it consistent with NDE's definition. We're proposing the word vessel for the first time because we realized we used it in regulations and there wasn't a definition, and it's consistent again with NDE's definition. And we're repealing water use industry because we don't use it. So in chapter 5, for state agency actions on state-owned lands, we're going in obviously to the water dependent facilities regulation and redrafting this regulation into different sections, but they generally track with the changes that are being made in subtitle 01. For 05 and 09, what that is regulation 09 is habitat protection areas, and 12 is habitat protection areas as well. We're updating both regulations. And then finally, in subtitle 03, chapter 1, notification of project applications, we're updating the definition of structure because we actually defined structure in all 3 subtitles and they weren't consistent. So we're fixing that now. So that's like a cleanup. So today, we're seeking a vote to publish these proposed regulations as final, and I have to be determined for all the other timing because we can't submit these right away because we have other regulations in the pipeline with the Maryland Register. So sometime in the future, we will be actually sending them in to be published. So we're looking for a vote today to approve these regulations as presented in the staff report and attachment. I'll turn it back over to Sandy.
Great, thank you, Lisa. Are there any questions on this section, second action item?
The only comment I have is that it just makes sense to do this sort of update, periodically, so.
Actually, we're required by statute to update our entire title, subtitle, and subtitles every 10 or so many years. And when we got the ability to actually do our regulations, our date had changed. So we've been methodically going through them and trying to do that, before our deadline comes up to do so.
Mm-hmm. That's good work. Thanks.
Thank you.
Were there any updates that needed to be made, whether in this regulation section or in other ones that are related to past legislation or anything this year? Do you guys look at the legislative session and then see whether or not there's anything that can impact your section?
We try to do that as best we can, and in working with, like in this case, because it had to do with water dependent facilities, we were working with MDE. So, we rely on them to let us know if there's something that needs to be updated. So again, I said earlier, that's not our specialty, like their regs, so we rely on our colleagues there to let us know if there's anything that needs to be updated.
I just have one other question, and didn't come to mind last year when we went through this. The term dredge spoil has come out of kind of favor.
Yeah.
It's moving more toward dredge material, and I
Yeah.
didn't know if that was reflective of like some of the other regulations that were in place.
I don't think we dealt with dredge spoil, to tell you the truth. I don't have my full set of regulations in front of me. I know we use the term in the water dependent facilities section with regard to placement of dredge spoil. I don't think we use material. I'd have to look it up. I don't have, like I said, I don't have my full regulations in front of me. It's not something we had thought of that needs to be updated, but certainly if that's what other agencies are using, we can look into that.
Yeah, we have changed, actually, MDOT and the MDE coordinated on updating basically how we reference dredged material
Okay.
now. So it is now dredged material, not
Thanks.
dredged oil.
And Lisa, on line
It's a good
20,
catch, thank you.
I'm trying to look at what page this is.
It
But
should
on,
come up twice at least in the regs.
but we did use the term dredge material. So we did in our draft did have it changed to dredge
We
material.
did change it?
It says, yeah, you may not approve the placement of dredge material in the buffer where a portion of critical area has been designated as an HPA except as necessary for.
But do we have a definition? Can you check the definition?
I don't know if we have a definition, but we definitely use dredge material. I'm just
Are you looking
looking,
at COMAR online?
I was just looking at our draft, and our draft has that as the update. But I can
just
look
wanna
up,
make sure that it's
can look that
changed
up.
in the regs, but I don't know whether we have a definition of dredge material, dredge soil in our current definitions, because if we do, then I'm sure we would have brought it up, but,
Yeah. So what Catherine picked up on is actually on our staff report,
Mhm.
page 10, line 6. Line 6. Okay, so that
And
and
then
then
that
again,
language is in brackets, so we're repealing that whole section and
Yes.
reproposing it.
oh,
the
excellent.
italicized
Is the replacement
is the
below it?
replacement, yes.
So
Okay, so let's
it
look
is
at
on
that.
page 11, perhaps?
It's at the bottom of page 10 and C as
Okay.
dredge material. May not place or approve the placement of dredge
Line
material.
59.
Yep,
So the italicized language is the proposed. I just want to make sure that we don't have a definition hanging out there that we miss, because if we
Yeah.
do, we need to get it.
And then it was also used earlier,
Which is also in brackets too, so I
Yes.
guess. Yeah, okay.
page 3. Lisa, at least in the water dependent, the only definition we have right now is water dependent facilities. We do not have a definition for
Can you look
dredge.
in the general provisions, just to make sure?
General provisions,
No dredge. Okay.
nope.
We're in good
Go-
shape then.
Nope, you
All
don't.
right, awesome. Thanks for double checking that.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine and Sandy.
So I have a question, okay? You know, being the mayor of a municipality on the water, on the bay, on the creek, all that, we're constantly working with DNR, and it seems like, we use the term dredge spoil. I mean, I've heard that word, 10,000 times in the last, 5 years. Should I have my staff stop using the word dredge spoil and use material?
Yeah, that would be
Okay.
fantastic.
Now, that's what we'll do. All right,
Yeah.
thanks.
And there's actually, and I can send it around after this meeting, there's actually guidance that MDE came out with on the appropriate use of dredged material, and they've actually categorized it, so it's something that helps you determine where you can use it.
If you send me that, then I can give it to staff.
Sure. will
Thank
do.
you. I know I came here for a reason.
It all started from Catherine. All right, well, at this point, can I get a motion to approve the proposed regulations that Lisa presented?
Commissioner Robertson, motion to approve.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks for looking that up.
Sure thing.
Here today.
All right, the next agenda
fine.
item will be presented by Susan McCluth,
Like stage person.
and she will be presenting on the Historic St. Mary City Commission Memorandum of Understanding. Take it away, Susan.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Hertz. So again, this is Susan McCook for the record, and I will be presenting the Historic St. Mary City Commission Memorandum of Understanding. And before I begin, I just want to let you know that we have Joe Kangas here with us today. He made the trip from Southern Maryland. I've been working with him closely for over probably a year on this MOU. So if you have any questions at the end, he'll be here to help answer them. we get started, I wanted to give you a brief outline for today's presentation. We'll begin with some background information on historic St. Mary's City, then we'll discuss general approvals before getting into the specifics of historic St. Mary's City Commission MOU, including the attachments. Then at the end, there'll be time for any questions you may have. So to help orient you to where historic St. Mary's City is located, here's a map of Maryland with St. Mary's County's circled. And zooming in just a bit more, you can see on the map on the right with the purple thumbtack, historic St. Mary's City is located along the St. Mary's River. So zooming in just a bit more, you can see historic St. Mary's City outlined in the light green here on the map on the left. And on the map on the right, we have the critical area overlaid on top. So you can see right here that it's all RCA, and there's approximately 350 acres of RCA located in the city. So the lands of historic St. Mary's City are owned by the state of Maryland, and they're governed by the Historic St. Mary's City Commission. The Historic St. Mary's City Commission was established in 1966, and its mission is to preserve and protect the archaeological and historical record of Maryland's first colonial capital, and to appropriately develop and use this historic and scenic site for the education, enjoyment, and general benefit of the public. The Historic St. Mary's City has been recognized as a National Historic Landmark since 1969 and is listed in the National Register of Historic Places. So as you know, under Natural Resources Article 8-1801 and COMAR 2702, the Critical Area Commission is required to approve any action by a state agency which results in development in the critical area on state-owned lands, private lands, or lands owned by local jurisdictions. COMAR 270203 specifically gives the Commission the ability to enter into a general approval with state agencies to seek approval for programs or classes of activities that result in development of a minor scale in the critical area. This general approval authority has commonly been implemented through the use of a Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, between the Commission and the state agency. The Historic St. Mary's City Commission MOU outlines the process for the review and approval by the Commission for historic St. Mary's City projects located within the critical area. It describes the responsibilities of both parties and provides a streamlined process for the review of specific types of projects. The MOU includes details regarding the specific projects that can be reviewed, the thresholds for disturbance or impacts for projects that can qualify under the MOU, and the necessary mitigation. So Exhibit A of the MOU, which begins on page 8, includes the conditions for general approval of historic St. Mary's City projects that may be approved at the agency or staff level, and these project types are broken into two categories. Category 1, limited reporting activities, and Category 2, development that is minor in size and/or scope. The MOU also includes two attachments. Attachment 1 is a mitigation guidance document, and it includes stormwater management guidance and a master buffer management plan. Attachment 2 is a site-wide climate resiliency assessment, which provides a baseline tool for historic St. Mary's City Commission staff to use when addressing critical area climate resiliency requirements for specific projects. The attachments will be discussed in more detail later in the presentation. So as noted in the previous slide, activities that qualify for review under the MOU fall within two categories. Category 1 activities, limited reporting activities, must meet the qualifying parameters for Category 1 projects and must be reported annually to Commission staff. Category 2 projects, development that is minor in size and/or scope, must meet the qualifying parameters for Category 2 projects and must be submitted to Commission staff for review and approval. So you can refer to page 9 of the MOU for a complete list of Category 1 projects. This slide lists several types of activities, including natural resources management, routine maintenance projects, facility maintenance for existing facilities only, and temporary outdoor events. Specific project types include archaeological related activities, signs, fencing, and trail maintenance, repair, replacement, or relocation of existing utilities, and temporary structures such as tents. The MOU specifies that temporary structures may not remain over pervious surfaces for more than 10 days, and any areas of impacted vegetation must be revegetated. Category 2 projects include development that is minor in size and or scope. The list of eligible Category 2 projects begins on page 12. Examples include maintenance projects that exceed the threshold limits for Category 1, new or expanded structures, and roadway, parking, and sidewalk projects where an increase in imperviousness is proposed. Specific project types include expansion or replacement of existing buildings and structures, installation of new or modification of existing storm drain outfalls, and reconstruction or resurfacing of roadways, parking lots, and sidewalks where an increase in imperviousness is proposed. As noted earlier, Category 2 projects must meet the qualifying parameters in order to be reviewed under the MOU. The Category 2 qualifying parameters begin on page 10. This slide lists several of these qualifying parameters, including the following. New buildings and structures are limited to 2,000 square feet. The limit of disturbance for nonlinear projects is limited to 5,000 square feet, and the expansion of lot coverage for linear projects is limited to a 3-foot width for roadways on either side and a 1-foot width on trail that is impervious on either side. Forest and developed woodland clearing is limited to 10,000 square feet for linear projects and 5,000 square feet for nonlinear projects. And there are no impacts to habitat protection areas are allowed other than the critical area buffer. The thresholds for disturbance or impacts listed under the qualifying parameters may be exceeded by minor amounts if Historic St. Mary's City Commission staff provides justification for the exceedance. Critical area staff will review the submittal and notify Historic St. Mary's City Commission staff whether or not they concur with granting an exception. If the project does not meet the exception, it will require full Critical Area Commission review and approval. Section 3.1.9 of the MOU on page 11 includes examples of justification, such as the nature or intensity of the project is not changing. After completion of work, the site will be restored to original conditions, and all other Category 2 parameters are met. The MOU includes mitigation ratios for buffer impacts and for non-buffer forest and developed woodland clearing. The various ratios are included on this slide and include 2-to-1 for a new water-dependent facility in the buffer, 3-to-1 for new non-water-dependent development in the buffer, and 1-to-1 for non-buffer forest or developed woodland clearing. So as you know, COMAR 27020502A2 requires state agencies to conduct an assessment of climate resilient practices that address coastal hazards, extreme weather events, and sea level rise. Historic St. Mary's City Commission staff will use the site-wide climate resiliency analysis in attachment 2 to determine whether a proposed project is located within a vulnerable area. If a Category 2 project is located in a vulnerable area, Historic St. Mary's City Commission staff will follow the processes and procedures outlined in attachment 2. In addition, Historic St. Mary's City Commission staff reviews all applicable projects in accordance with the Coast Smart Construction Program guidance as amended to ensure avoidance and minimization of impacts to projects located in vulnerable locations. Attachment 1, mitigation, begins on page 15 of the MOU. This attachment includes guidance related to stormwater management, a master buffer management plan, and potential mitigation sites. The stormwater management section includes a list of landscape options for stormwater management, best management practices that may be more suitable for historic sites given the constraints with ground disturbance. The master buffer management plan identifies several specific uses allowed within the buffer at Historic St. Mary's City and includes guidance for each of the buffer uses. The The master buffer management plan also includes a list of potential mitigation sites that have been identified to date. The list is not exhaustive and may change in the future as additional sites are identified. Attachment 2, the site-wide climate resiliency assessment, begins on page 24. As noted earlier, state agencies are required to consult with the Commission as soon as practicable in the project planning process to assess climate resilient practices. The Storage St. Mary's City Commission staff will use the site-wide climate resiliency assessment, attachment 2, to determine whether a proposed project is located within a vulnerable area. If a project is located in a vulnerable area, staff will follow the procedures outlined in attachment 2. As mentioned earlier, Historic St. Mary's City is also required to review all applicable capital projects in accordance with the Coast Smart Construction Program guidance as amended. Recommendation is approval of the Historic St. Mary's City Commission MOU as proposed. Thank you for your attention. I'll turn it back over to Commissioner Hertz for any discussion or questions.
Thank you. Before I ask for questions from the rest of the commissioners, I just wanted to ask a couple of questions related to the MOU as I'm scanning through it. So I don't know if you have a copy in front of you, but on page 9, under the Natural Resources Management section for eligible projects, the second to last bullet seems to be maybe missing a couple words. It just seems a little awkwardly written after the attachment 1:. It just says mitigation and to include limbing of trees, and I don't know whether or not that is meant to be maintain existing structure and canopy by limbing trees or whatever it might be, but consistent with your management plan.
So attachment 1, I think for the, so in attachment 1, in the master buffer management plan, it like goes through all the different buffer use categories. So where the existing view sheds are located, limbing of trees is allowed in those areas. So would more detail about what limbing might, like defining limbing maybe, would that be helpful?
No, I'm just wondering, I don't know if others have the, I guess I'm the only one that actually has it. But it says, the way it reads right now is maintenance of existing view sheds as shown on the master buffer management plan in attachment 1, mitigation and to include limbing of trees.
Maybe
So
just the title of attachment 1, mitigation, maybe we can just take that title, because it's like attachment 1, I see what you're saying,
yeah,
right?
so it
like
just kind of reads like, what do you mean
right.
when you say mitigation, and then you go right into
Exactly, because
limbing.
that's the title of attachment 1, and it is, you're right, like a little misleading, because there's master buffer management plan, so maybe we can just say attachment 1 to include, and then just leave out the title.
Yes,
I
think that would be a little bit easier
Yes,
to read.
exactly. I get it.
Okay, and then on,
take that out, yes.
thank you. And then on page 17, under meadow maintenance,
Yes.
the last main bullet where you have the listed sites, it looks to me like you have Chapel Field North in there twice.
Yes, I believe it is, yes.
Meadow, just another thing.
Actually, if I might interrupt, I believe those are 2 different fields, but they're both Chapel fields, but they're separate fields.
But they're the exact same acreage and the exact same amount in the critical
There's a
area?
north and a south.
There's
There's
a
2
north
norths
and a
a
south, and maybe we put in north twice, so I think,
I
there's
see.
north and
Yeah,
south, and I think,
yeah.
right.
That's what caught my eye, so I would just confirm.
I can double check that too. I think you're correct there.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right. Are there any questions from the commissioners for Susan? All right. So at this point, I would like to seek a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Would that with the friendly amendments? Just
Oh, yes, with the 2 amendments that we just discussed.
But yeah, obviously.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Got it.
All right. And then, did we have a second from you, Commissioner Johnson?
Yes, second.
Thank you.
3 for 3.
Yes. Sweet. All right, at this point, we'll go for a vote. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries. Thank you.
Yep. 17, delete Chapel Field North, choice on page 9, delete, I have no mitigation.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's good.
Thank you.
2 minutes to